Okay, thank you so much, Malini, for coming forward for Break the Stigma India. So, the Break the Stigma India movement aims to create mental health awareness and break down barriers. We hope to create an atmosphere where we can talk comfortably about not feeling good, to inspire people to normalize having conversations on emotional matters and reach out to each other in their circle. So we have with us today Malini Agarwal. Her brand, Miss Malini, took the world by storm. She literally single handedly brought the world of blogging to India. She is the founder and creative director of Miss Malini Entertainment, a leading media and lifestyle brand that creates highly engaging content geared towards India's internet generation. Her content is consumed by 30 million people each month across multiple platforms. So once again, thank you so much, Malini, for coming forward and supporting the movement.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, Shubhika.
All right. So it's a bit like a role reversal today. You're usually the one asking questions, and today you have graciously agreed to answer mine as your support towards Break the Stigma India. So
Thanks so much for
Malini,
having me.
yeah, our pleasure. So Malini, I love that you created an entire online space for women to feel safe as well as heard with Malini's Girl Tribe. I mean, I view it as such a positive action on your part. So was there a personal experience that prompted you to do so?
I think more than just my personal experience, I feel a lot of women face this online where, I'm sure your DMs or your comments are filled with so much junk, sometimes very sexual messages or vulgar messages or even dick pics. And I think it was starting to really weigh on all of our mental health. And, we don't realize it sometimes, but we're always told to just ignore it or, people are just looking for attention, but it actually does slowly erode your mental health. And I felt that
Right.
women are not able to use the internet to the best of their ability and what it's meant for. And so I thought I'd create a social media space exclusively for women, which is the Girl Tribe community. And I have seen women really flourish there. They've found friends, they've found people who are going to be sisters for life. They get answers to all sorts of questions. There's no judgment. And very often it's easier to talk to a stranger about a very personal matter than even someone you know, because you may not be willing to or able to share some personal matters, whether it is about anything you're going through. Sometimes it's even about coming out of the closet, experiences you're having with other family members. So I think that it's really nice, especially at a time like this when everybody's sort of trapped at home with the lockdown and the virus, to have a space where you don't feel alone because you have a huge community of women supporting you.
Right. And you've really grown it to about 45,000 women, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yeah,
That's
that's
right.
right.
Yeah. And, so coming, as you were saying, that women are subjected to so much harassment as well as stereotypes, especially in our country. I hear one very often where, a girl who's flourishing in her career is stereotyped as not being family oriented or being marriage material. So this
Right.
adds like another layer of pressure and conflict to the already existing struggles that all of us are dealing with. And so I'm wondering, have you ever faced the impact of this at some point in your life, like having to deal with an extra burden for just being a woman?
I don't know if it's extra burden that way, but there's definitely been times where people have made the odd comment. Like I've gone to family weddings and my mom introduced me to some auntie who immediately said, "How many children do you have?" And I said, "I don't have children. I've been busy with my business and I don't, think that that's maybe something that I necessarily have to do." And it was funny because my mom felt she needed to come to my defense and say, "Oh, they just got married," but I've been married 8 years. So it's just this, fear that people will judge you in
Right,
society. And I've been pretty lucky that in my work, nobody's really pointed a finger or treated me poorly as a woman, as a female entrepreneur. But
right.
I've seen shades of it now and again. And I've seen a lot of friends have talked about experiences like that. But for me, it's these little things that obviously, yeah, still do bother me when I hear them. Even though, you try to get a little thick skin after a while.
Right. And I relate to that because I think a lot of women who choose not to have children are associated with not loving children. And it's just not the same thing at all, But I think this is like a dominant stereotype in our country. But I've seen some documentaries about French women, kind of feeling the same way. So, as you said, like we all go through these, emotions where someone else has the power to just make us feel unhappy or just make us feel not good about ourselves, right? Like, I feel that this is a normal part of life because we're interacting with so many people and life will throw us curveballs. So I'm sure at some point, Malini, you had to deal with something, maybe on a professional level or work level. Is there a time that you struggled emotionally that you would be comfortable to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I'm sure they're not just one incident. There's lots of different ones. But I know when I first moved to Bombay, I think I was in a relationship with someone and that wasn't going well. And then when we broke up, it really had a big emotional impact on me. And I think that what happens a lot of times is if you're just breaking up with a boyfriend, they don't take it as seriously as if a marriage broke up. So you're not really allowed to mourn it so seriously, or, maybe judged for it having been your own choice to be with someone. So I definitely struggled with dealing with the emotional backlash of feeling so torn up about it, but probably being told not to, let it bother me or get over it. And I think that's something that if
Sure.
anyone is going through something in their minds and their lives, the worst thing you can do is tell them to get over it and sort of
Mm.
brush it aside as not being significant, because clearly it's something that's important to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you have a go-to person for when you're feeling down or you need a like an emotional upliftment of sorts?
So I'm very lucky that I have a really great group of friends. I have a great family, so they're very supportive. I definitely call
Mm.
my best friend Parul. She's also the Mumbai mummy on Instagram. She has four
Okay.
kids, so I don't know how she does that. So, just somebody who would make me laugh. I have a lot of friends,
Right.
who are been around and been with me for so many years, and they'll always be there. I have another friend, Priyanka, who always, through the virus, has checked on me every day, and she'll send me like a cute animal emoji and say, all good. So these little things make a
Oh,
big difference,
yeah,
just knowing that
yeah.
somebody's thinking about you and cares enough to check on you. So these things really make me feel good.
Right. And actually, it's only these little small gestures that brings us like the biggest smile. And having someone we can talk to who understands without judging, right? And you can feel like they can connect to you about whatever it is that you're talking. That also brings me to the other part that what is it about Priyanka or Parul that makes it so comfortable for you to share with them? Like, what are some of the qualities that they're making you feel?
I think the great thing about friends is that there's no judgment, right? With family, sometimes also they might say, be more critical, or may have make a comment that you might be more comfortable hearing from a friend than a family member. I think it's
Right.
always that they've always been very sweet and loving and down to earth. They've always had zero judgment. So I think that's a
Mm.
big piece of it, when you know that you can say anything to someone and they won't judge you. They'll have your back. Even if they may not agree with you, they'll tell you that kindly. But at the end of the day, they'll let you make your own choices and be there to support you, even if those choices may not turn out to be the best for you. So I
Right.
think that's a quality that they both have.
Yeah. And just as you said, I think we all have people around us, perhaps, who can comfort us. And sometimes, it's us who have to sort of reach out and connect to them. So I think everybody should do that. And if you don't have someone in your life, then perhaps, reach out to an NGO like Lifeline Foundation, which is a free telehealth line open for people to reach out to in a safe and non-judgmental environment. So, you talked a lot right now about, these stereotypes and judgments that creates a barrier in reaching out, and connecting to people. Because somewhere we feel that, there's a sense of fear that someone's going to think of us as maybe unstable, mad, or crazy. And sometimes just weak for not being able to handle this, right? Um, and somewhere I think we recognize that, there are people living with high amounts of stress, in despair, battling depression, and being driven to take lives. So, how do you feel, Malini, that as a society, we can fuel this change to a positive direction where we can kind of break down this judgmental nature?
I think the biggest problem with the way society perceives depression is they look at it as a weakness. And it
Mm.
is not necessarily weakness. It is something somebody's going through. Just like when you go to a doctor for a toothache or something like that, that does
Right.
not mean that you're a weak person. It's something that needs treatment. It's an illness. And I think because, especially when I think it comes to men, showing signs of weakness is considered very unmacho. If they
Mm.
go and ask for therapy, they say, oh, don't be a crybaby about it. For women, it comes down to don't air your dirty laundry in public. So a lot of it has to do with what will other people say, and does
Yeah.
this make me look bad? And this is something that translates even onto social media, where everybody is pretending to live the perfect life
Mm.
because they're afraid of judgment, or they need all this validation,
Oh, that's
and
right.
they're feeling very alone as a result.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to recognize that we should not put everything under one catch-all. There might be situations where someone has felt weak. They might have been depressed. They might have had anxiety. Also, this one catch-all phrase of depression for every mental illness is
Everything.
a problem,
Yeah.
because there's so
Yeah.
many different things, right? There could be,
Yeah.
you could be bipolar. You could have, all kinds of different mental health
Right.
issues. But if you put it under one catch-all, then you may not even be able to suggest the right treatment for someone. So I think the most
Absolutely.
important thing is also when people are being supportive and just saying, okay, just talk to me or talk to a friend. Sometimes that's not enough. It definitely helps to have someone to talk to. But very often your friends or family members may not be equipped or be able to give you the tools you need
Right.
fight mental illness. So I think the
Absolutely.
biggest thing about breaking that stigma is to take away this notion that means that there's something wrong with you, or that you're weak, or that you're trying to spread rumors or whatever it is, or looking for attention or doing
Mm.
drama is the other thing that people hear a lot,
Right.
and
Just
approach it
doing, yeah.
just
Yeah.
approach it as you would any other illness or any other reason to go to the doctor. Right now, if you show any symptoms of a cough or a cold, you're getting a test to check if you have COVID-19. So
Right.
similarly, if you show symptoms of mental health concerns, you should go and see a mental health professional.
Absolutely. That's so wonderfully said. And, you picked up this point about men and, men finding it difficult to speak. And, talking about that, I feel like a lot of men are sort of conditioned from the time they're children to not express their emotions. Like they're shamed. If you've heard of terms like, oh, don't cry like a boy. I mean, sorry, don't cry
Oh,
like a girl. Or, boys don't cry. Like it's almost like they're conditioned that you've got to be tough and
yeah.
strong because it's women who cry and hence are weak. So, you've already said that it's difficult for men to open up and reach out. Do you think there's anything that we can do to change that?
I think we have the greatest opportunity now as the generation who are going to be the parents and the role models for the next generation. Obviously, with our peers, we should make the effort to normalize mental health, help normalize all the things that we now take an effort to normalize, whether it comes to equality for women, all races, all genders, all of that.
Right.
Similarly, it's very important for us to normalize that. But I think the most important work we can do is for the next generation, to educate them and to be the leaders and the parents and the older brothers and sisters who set the right example, who talk about mental health, who talk about it when they go to therapy, who talk about all these things. I always tell people, I love that I go to a therapist, and it helps me a great deal just to offload and talk about things. And it's literally someone who's going to sit there and listen to you with the right tools, capable of giving you the right response and advice, will know how to deal with your triggers, will know how to equip with your tools. And I'll give you an example. My therapist gave me an excellent tool for whenever I would feel attacked or feel insecure. She said, always approach the world with a shield of empathy and kindness, and not necessarily for other people, for yourself.
For
Because if
yourself,
you
right?
approach other people with empathy and kindness, you will be empathetic to their situation and realize that they're obviously going through something themselves. This anger, this lashing out has everything to do with them and nothing to do with you. So don't take it personally when it's coming out in your direction, because it's just sort of a byproduct or a symptom of a bigger issue that they're dealing with. And so if you're able to take away your defensiveness, you're probably going to be more
Absolutely.
effective in helping them.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a great tool, and I wouldn't have got it if I hadn't gone to therapy.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I think you've just described my profession so beautifully. And thank you also. I think so many youngsters and viewers who are going to see this video, I think will be inspired by someone like you saying openly that, you do go to a therapist just to offload, to have a safe space, to have conversations, as well as receive like tools that actually helps you into decluttering your mind.
Yeah, and I think my therapist said something great, because I'd gone in talking about a situation, and he stopped and he a different therapist. He was like, "Have you come here for my permission And that he was like, you don't need to see, a lot of people have this fallacy that you go to a therapist and they're going to solve your problems for you, or tell you what to do. And that's not what therapy is supposed to do or what it does. It equips
Right.
you to deal with whatever decisions you make. And I thought
That's
that
right.
was great, where he said that you make your choices and you will, in one situation, probably hurt intensely and a lot, but for a short period of time, and then you'll move on. Or you can stay in the situation and you're also a fixer and adaptable, so you can also fix that. But you decide what you want to do, and then we will deal with that. And I
Yeah.
think that's great to be able to be given that opportunity to deal with your feelings,
Right.
with someone who knows how to help you do that.
Yeah. And I think that's the other part about, when we're talking to people in general about, challenges and problems we're having, it's very often that you find someone who's actually there to listen to you. It's not often to find that.
Right.
But actually, people go into problem solving mode that, hey, come, let me
Do
solve your
this.
problem
Yeah.
for you. Or
Yeah.
they hijack your problem
Yeah.
and say, you know what, this has happened to me and this is how I tackled it. So
Right.
I think, having a therapist or just, a safe inner circle where you can talk and vent, or just get some, problem solving tips back in terms of, just bouncing ideas is so helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it just, I feel like it really helps you. I recommend also, there's a lot of people who are dealing with domestic abuse right now. And I think the problem isn't just at the end where somebody is beaten up and then, needs to be hospitalized. And I think the problem tends to start a lot earlier. And if a lot of couples went to therapy early
Right.
on, and it's not just for the women to be counseled from being victims, but also for the men to figure out where their anger is coming from, where the abuse is
Right.
coming from. It might very well be that they've gone through something in their childhood or their past, and that's how they're expressing their anger, and maybe they can be given the tools to deal with it differently. So I think that at every step of the ladder,
Yeah.
even for children, a lot of people say, no, how can I send my child to therapy? They're not crazy, they'll become crazy. But that's not the point. I think that the concept of therapy has been given a very skewed definition.
Yeah.
Just
That's
like the
right.
concept of feminism has become very bastardized in the
Yeah.
terminology,
Yeah.
is that therapy isn't like that you're going to something because something is wrong with you. You're going to someone to help you deal with things, just like
Yeah.
you would, like I keep saying, with a medical condition. And I think that if people started to redefine therapy with
Right.
maybe perhaps other words of
Yeah.
understanding and empathy, if you were going to empathy as opposed to
Yeah.
therapy, nobody would judge it as much, right? If you were
Right.
going to a session of kindness as opposed to a session of, a therapy session, or just, I think people would see it as, okay, good, go get some kindness. So I
Right.
think we need to just sort of redefine these words for ourselves.
Absolutely. I think that's beautifully said. And what I use with my clients is that, I'm here to empower you.
Yeah.
And, let's not talk about it in terms of like mental weakness, because it's not.
Yeah.
And the thing is that we're all hiding behind a mask somewhere that
Yeah.
everything is so right and perfect in my life, and I need to hide and brush under the carpet
Yeah.
other things, right? And I think that's a huge part of this movement as well, that to not brush not feeling okay, to not brush under the carpet the times that we don't feel okay. And I think the more we talk about it, the more people will start having these conversations. And also at the same time, the other important aspect of this is listening,
Yeah.
where, we can encourage people to be compassionate listeners, and share that with their friends and families. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
Malini, yeah. You also, we've just been through this pandemic, and mental health has really come up to the forefront, where people who hadn't heard the term earlier are now talking about it, because everybody's felt some level of stress, anxiety, depression, or just intense fear. So what can be done for people to address it and take it seriously here on?
So I think there's a couple of things. I think that a lot of people may not personally be ready to, or even know where to begin, because as much as you might say that there's a free helpline to call, it's very intimidating to do that, just call and talk to a stranger and you don't even know where to begin. But I think there's different things we can do, especially now with HR companies working, on overdrive to try to help their employees. Perhaps there can be some element of therapy baked into the culture or HR system in your company. I think that it's very important for us to, and we've seen a spate of, unfortunate deaths recently. And, some were accidents, some were, people dying of suicide. And I think that there's a lot of distinctions that need to be made. Again, people still say commit suicide, but it's not a crime. So
Right.
you have to stop using those words. And I think, again, trying to understand what those things are. And I think the world I live in, which is the social media, digital world, there's so much emphasis on public perception. And you may not care how many likes you get, but you care how people will think of you based on how many likes you get. And that's suddenly become our social equity and our credit. We didn't used to walk around with a number on our heads that people could tap to increase to know our self-worth. So that's having a big impact. The concept of FOMO is having a big impact. This idea that everybody else is living this fabulous life, which is not necessarily true, which is why I think it's great when influencers, and a lot of them do talk about mental health. Rohan Joshi, Rega, Ja, Tanmay Bhatt, everyone does talk about it. Kusha Kapila. I think it's so great when people who are in the public eye talk about it. Deepika Padukone has talked about it so much, because I think that normalizes it. And nobody in their heart will ever genuinely inside judge someone for feeling those feelings, because everybody has felt sad. Maybe it was not full-blown depression, but they felt some aspect of it. I think the things people need to know, and so I had done a session with somebody from Empower about this, is understanding the grieving process.
Right.
Where, when there was a death by suicide or there was an accident, how do you know if you, as someone who's grieving, is depressed? And we understood the tools that if it carries on beyond 6 months, if there are certain, signs that you're seeing, the triggers that you're seeing. And I think that's really key for us in lockdown, for us to be aware of those signs in our friends and family, so we can recognize them and then reach out, because a lot of times people may not be ready to ask for help. And it's also important that as the people that know them best, we all have friends that know that, hey, what's wrong? I can tell something is wrong. Right. It's at that point, asking that question already helps, but then also reaching out and saying, hey, let me equip you with the tools. And I always recommend to people, don't just say, hey, go get therapy. Help them find the right phone number, get the details, find out if it's free or paid. If you're asking them to go see someone, locate the closest therapist to them. And these are the little things you can do to help solve the problem. So I think that's the thing. I think it's more than just blanket saying, I think you need to go see someone.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think it also just helps when, as a loved one, you're providing information to make it easier for, for the person. Because, when you have it accessible on your device, a phone number or an address, it's just easier to reach out when you're not feeling great. Yeah. So Malini, it's been so lovely talking to you. And I just want to let you know that what I really love about you is that you stand for so many things. I mean, of course, there's the Bollywood glitz and glam and the entertainment, but, you've really taken your strong position and you've started Girls Tribe. You've started the more recently Ignore No More, which is against online harassment and trolling. And you've also now supported Break the Stigma India. And so our only hope is that we continue normalizing these conversations around mental health, but also for people to create safe spaces in their own circles so that no one struggles silently. So thank you so much for coming on board, and your support really means the world to us. And I'm so confident it will fuel the reach much further to all your followers, as well as people who look up to you as a role model.
Thank you so much for having me. You guys are doing incredible work. And I think it's always very commendable when someone is taking out their mind space and their heart to help other people deal with things, and that there's no bad that can come of that. So thank you so much. And I absolutely support Break the Stigma.
Thank you so much, Malini. And before we end, I have a small little favor for you.
Sure.
I want you to nominate 10 people who you think will take this conversation forward, create safe spaces within their circle, and help in supporting Break the Stigma India.
Awesome. Sounds good. I'll have to think about who those 10 are, but I
can
write it.
Just whenever you can just do a post and share that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much, Malini. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. Bye.
Bye.